Hi, welcome to a Roboflow training movie. In this training movie, I will try to explain a common mistake in Roboflow workflows, and that is opening and closing catalogs, when to do it and how to do it. First of all, as you might remember from previous training movies, Roboflow has 6 standard workflow templates. These are the base functionalities of the workflow, and whenever you create a new workflow, the very first thing is choose from one of these. Actually, the description of one of these says exactly what the workflow does automatically, for which you don't have to do anything. So process a list of records is one of the type of workflows. Actually, the technical name behind the scene is a hot collection template. Hot folder templates, processing newly dropped files in a hot folder is what we call a hot folder template. Means that it processes files. So like here, processing records, this means that this workflow in itself opens a catalog, launches a query, and then processes the records. And processing means it sends the record to the action script in which you can define whatever process you want to happen on the records found. So I have here a sample workflow hot collection template, and it has the sample catalog and it has a query. Basically, this means that when this workflow starts, it will automatically open this catalog, and in each loop, it will launch this query. So you don't have to do that yourself. So in the action script for records, all you need to do is process the records, period. So a common mistake is that people think, okay, I want to process the records, so I need to open the catalog. No, you don't. You can open the catalog to do a secondary query to another catalog, or within the same catalog. Maybe you want in this catalog to find other records. Well, then it is smartest to open a second catalog like we do here and do a query in it. So if your workflow is a hot collection workflow, hot collection template workflow, the parameters already have a catalog name and already have a query. Those are the fixed things, the fixed functionalities. So you do not need to do this, and you do not need to open and close. This workflow does that for you. As I said, if you want to do a secondary query based on the items found in the catalog from the first query, yes, then you can do this, but otherwise it's not necessary. Another thing that is important to notice, and maybe that hasn't been emphasized enough in previous training movies, you can open a catalog, or you can use in any workflow, if it says catalog name or it says field name, etc., etc. In the catalog name you have a drop down, and it gives you the possibility to hard code the catalog, but of course you can use the famous tag instruction to call up a text variable that is already in memory, in the global or in the local memory. And this looks like a good instruction, but actually it is not. Yes, this is a little bit confusing, and here you see variable, but in fact these are the variables, but these are just the display names of the variables. The actual technical name of a variable is what you can see on the other side. Here, the actual variable is called Cumulus catalog. It's not called catalog. And so, yeah, that is a little bit confusing maybe, but for reasons of giving a little bit more explanation in the name, it was decided at some point in the product that we would have nice English names and not technical names for the variables. It was also an idea that in the future it might be that there is a translation provided for the Roboflow instructions and actions and workflows, and then these would be then in German or in Spanish or whatever language it gets translated into. So that is why you have to be careful. So for instance, if you don't know, here you don't see the technical name. If you don't know the technical name, as soon as you open it, it will show you the technical name. So this variable, if you want to use this somewhere else in the script, you need to talk to it under the tag email notify. Same for catalog, you have to talk to it, and here it doesn't show up, but as soon as you go in and it notices that it isn't there, it will. So here the Cumulus catalog is the actual term to use, the actual tag and the actual variable, and it's with every. So if you want to know what this is, double click and you will see here is the technical name. So this only happens in the parameter section. So if there are variable names, so for instance, if I were to add here Cumulus asset reference, this is the technical name. If I look here, oh, it's not even correct. Wait, we can check it here. Yeah, it's abbreviated. So you see here asset handling set, but in reality the technical name is Cumulus asset handling set. So even if you create a new variable in your workflow to overwrite that global one, and you say here new, it's always a good idea to keep that same technical term. So everywhere you have the same syntax. You can, as you know, add selection dialogues. So here the ones available are specified here below. And so asset handling set dialog. If I do OK here, it will add this button. If I don't add that little section afterwards. But notice it actually says asset handling set, so it makes it readable or more readable. So yes, this is probably a little bit confusing for you guys who are building more advanced workflows, that you suddenly see here, hey, here the name of the variable is asset handling set, while in reality it is actually asset handling set written, Cumulus asset handling set written in one word. So sorry for the confusion, but please remember, first of all, if you are in a type of workflow that opens already a catalog, don't open it yourself unless you need it for a second purpose, and then it's just a second instance of that catalog that you're opening and that you're talking to and maybe launching queries in. And second, if you're using variables that are available on the start, on the parameter page, always make sure to check inside to see that what the real technical name of the thing is, that it's not the display name, but that you need this, this technical name. And so normally you can just open and close a catalog here. The reason why this is into first loop and last loop, again, not necessary for this type of workflow, but if you do require it, it is a good idea to, let's say that you're processing here as a result maybe 400 records, and then record by record you're maybe looking up the related record in another catalog or in the same catalog. Then if you just put an open and a close here, then it opens and closes the catalog 400 times. While if you do it this way, you do a test in the if first loop. The if first loop is actually if first item loop. So each time the workflow loops, it has a process, and the result are items to process, in this case records. So 400 records will execute this script 400 times. But what you're saying here is I'm opening this catalog, and as I mentioned before, this variable isn't catalog but Cumulus catalog, as we saw in the first page here. And so Cumulus catalog, and then if you open it, it is normally if you don't prefix with this, it will be available only for that action script. Every variable you create in an action script stays in that action script. So the next record starts with a new clean action script, a new clean local storage. So you could not use this way. But by prefixing it with the global hashtag, it tells the workflow, hey, you need to store this in the global section. The global section is actually the section also where the parameters are stored, or the section where the global settings are stored. They are loaded when the workflow starts, and it's a global section, memory section that is available for the workflow. Well, this particular section then stores this object. It is important then that you also add a test to your workflow if it has processed the last item of the loop, and if it has, then you should close the catalog. So then you close the catalog that was open. Again, only if you opened it, and only if you need a second instance of the catalog. As I said, this workflow normally doesn't need that. If you just want to find the records and maybe send somebody a mail or set a field value, you don't need to open and close the catalog. It is already being opened and closed by the standard functionality of a hot collection. Same for a watch categories workflow, which automatically opens that. Same for an FTP workflow, which automatically opens the connection to the FTP server. And so you don't need to do that. Same for a hot folder workflow. You don't need to create the folder object in the workflow. It already does that for you. It already gets the files for you in that folder. And so same for a watch folder. It automatically opens the catalog. And so don't do it if you don't need it for another purpose, for something else you need to do on top with each record or file found in that process. So, but if you do need it, this is a good way of working. If you're on average going to execute 100 records per time it loops, yes, that's a good idea. If you're going to process 3 records a day, well, then maybe it isn't necessary to bother with complicating your script, but it is good practice. Notice here, so by prefixing it when the object is created, it is automatically, and when you use this instruction, imagine that I'm doing a query, it will suggest that variable with that same prefix, but it is not a mandatory thing. The prefix is only mandatory, the global prefix is only mandatory if you create the object. Afterwards, each time you use a variable, like here, I can specify this or I can specify that. The difference is that if I specify this, it will first look in the local storage, in the memory of this action script, and if it doesn't find it, then it automatically falls back on the global storage. If you specify it, if you specify it immediately with the global tag, it knows immediately that it doesn't need to look in the local storage. And so that's very important. So that's why you see here the catalog 1 is the name of the object, but in fact by creation you actually called it global catalog 1, so both instructions are valid. This is the quickest one because you're telling immediately where the object is. It doesn't have to look, it doesn't have to say, hey, is it in the local storage? No, then I look in the global. No, by prefixing it here immediately it says go straight to the global storage. So I hope this was clearing up some confusions or mistakes that you might make building your first workflows. The key thing is remember what type of workflow you're in, and if the type of workflow already processes records, then it will open the catalog for you. If it already processes categories, it will open the category. What you do in the action script is the logic that you want to execute on top of the result of that workflow, and the result of a hot collection workflow are records. So the action script does something with each individual record. A hot folder does something with each individual file, etc., etc. So please keep that in mind. And if you're using parameters from the parameters tab, make always sure to check the real tag, because the real tag name is not what you see here always. For the ones you create yourself and that don't exist in Cumulus, they will nicely be keeping the naming that you gave it, but these predefined ones, they come with some kind of nicer English style way in the variable column, which might be confusing, but now you know. So thank you for joining this training movie. I hope this was helpful, and then I see you in the next one.